If you can be patient, then you might like this book. So this is Hexagon Bridge. We've had 3 issues come out so far, and it's looking really promising. It's created, written, and drawn, and I think colored and lettered all by the same guy, Richard Blake, and I'm pretty sure that this is his first time doing any kind of comic-related work, which, for a first time, this is really good. What really drew me in was the aesthetic that he has going on the cover. I mean, just look at the layout on here. The design of the logo, the overall design of the whole cover, the fonts he's chosen, the colors he's got going in this one big panel, the choice to have just a panel instead of a full page. It's really setting the tone for the whole series, and it kind of gives you a sense of dignity and sensible restraint. Like, there's a lot of depth here, but he doesn't have to throw it in your face because you're just gonna see as you go how much depth there is. And as a fan of Jonathan Hickman, especially his work on Fantastic Four, I really like that aesthetic. And then you open the first page and you get this gorgeous, is that watercolor? I don't know. Gorgeous coloring, gorgeous art, really great layout. It's so simple and effective and textured. And I guess I might as well go through the art first. The art in this book is usually really, really good. I think that one of Richard Blake's strengths is environment. He draws really great landscapes. He draws really great city scenes. He's very, very good about making every setting feel very real and lived in and textured and honest. And even though he's using watercolors for a lot of his coloring, making it feel more organic and textured, he's also got a lot of digital elements. The book is also very scientific. It's definitely science fiction. And as much as it has nature in it, it also has these very rigid planes. Just a bunch of shapes stacked on top of each other. Even in just this page right here, his sense of shape is very developed. He's using all kinds of shapes to build very emotive pictures. And I'm just looking at the first issue right now. We get into more of the weird science shapes later, but I'll get to that. I think that one of his weaknesses as the artist is the characters. Not because he can't draw characters well, because he very often does draw characters confidently and well, with very good anatomy and very good expression. But there's a little bit of an inconsistency, especially when the characters are in the background. It's normal to simplify the character, but he loses some consistency of how their faces look. And even sometimes when a character is right up close, the face isn't as detailed as it normally is. Sometimes he's very detailed about faces. Sometimes he's not super detailed. Sometimes he has really strong lines, and sometimes his lines look a little bit sketchy and unfinished. So I think the inconsistency of his character illustration is one of the weaknesses of this book. The overall plot is interesting. It's basically map makers 2,000 years in the future going into alternate dimensions and trying to map out what they find there, but it's very complicated. It's not quite as physical as the dimension that we're in, so it's difficult to map out. It's difficult to even get your bearings inside there. And basically 2 map makers went into this weird dimension and they haven't been found, and now their daughter, who has this kind of psychic connection to that dimension, is trying to find them, and, well, that's about it. The cliffhanger is not great. We know what the main character wants to do, but we don't feel a ton of emotion behind that, especially because he ended the book with kind of an establishing shot of the setting, which is great. Like I said earlier, he's great at these setting pictures. He's great at establishing shots and giving us environments that feel real and lived in, but that doesn't give us a great cliffhanger. That just kind of gives us a sense of peace with what's happened. The overall tone of this series is very scientific. It's very to the point. The characters only say things when they have something to say, and they don't say anything extra, which is good in some ways and boring in other ways. Because like I said before, I love Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, and when somebody speaks in that series, they mean it. They say what they mean, and then they're done. And that does lend a sort of weight to what people are saying and doing. It makes it feel important, but it also deprives us of character. We don't have very many individual characters. Everybody in this book is very single-mindedly trying to accomplish the exact same thing, which is refreshing. We don't have needless arguments everywhere, but it is a little bit dry. And when everybody in the issue is so calm and scientific about what they're trying to do, it does leave you feeling a little bit disconnected from the event. You don't feel a ton of emotion. There's not a lot of drive for you to see this character accomplish what they're setting out to do, because it seems like they're just going to be fine either way. Which, you know, in her head, she wants to accomplish this thing, but you don't feel it. So because there's not a lot of emotion to grab onto right away, I had to keep reminding myself to slow down and just enjoy each panel and get lost in this world. And I don't get to do that very often with comics anymore. You know, it's a very cerebral, deliberate story that wants you to focus on the details and just let it be what it's going to be. And the day that I let my short attention span deprive me of good literature is the day I die. So issue 1 set up this great mood and tone and environment, but it didn't leave me wanting more all that much. But I got issue 2 anyway, and it was more of the same. It was a great tone, great landscapes, great environments, great watercolor painting, kind of sketchy people drawing, but I think he's getting more consistent as he goes. One of the characters that becomes a real character in issue 2 is kind of an artificial intelligence, and he seems a bit too human to me. He's too normal for my taste. Even just once in a while, I'd like to be reminded that he's an imperfect artificial intelligence, because he seems like just a regular dude. He wears coats like a regular dude, he says yup like a regular dude, he's just got a robot face. And I know that he's a really good artificial intelligence, he's really, really good at acting like a human, but just once in a while, I'd like to see a reminder that he is still imperfect. When Blake gets down into the nitty-gritty of like cityscapes and draws details in there, it's really great. He's probably got a lot of experience just painting buildings, drawing buildings, and you can tell. There's also not a ton of plot in issue 2. I feel like the story is advancing kind of slowly, which, again, you just gotta be patient and trust that he's going somewhere. And then at the end of the issue, we get another non-cliffhanger where he has a really great landscape portrait, but it still makes you feel that peace that you've reached a conclusion. So more or less, issue 2 had all the same strengths and weaknesses that issue 1 had. And then issue 3 came out, and this is where we really get into the cool science illustration. We're getting this really cool mix of his usual watercolor work that's very textured and organic looking, mixed with these rigid, flat, almost computer-generated looking shapes. The coloring of all those computer-generated looking shape stuff is a really great contrast. This looks super science-y, but it doesn't look like the rest of the book. So the effect that you end up getting is real characters in a real world interacting with very scientific equipment that looks futuristic. Just look at these pages. Richard Blake cares about making you feel immersed in this world. One of the things that I love about the art in this issue in particular is that we're really seeing a lot of this science facility up close. And you think about scientific facilities in other media and it's very sterile. There's a lot of right angles, there's a lot of straight lines, there's a lack of color. It just feels very rigid. So we're looking at a scientific facility here, but it doesn't feel like a rigid or sterile drawing. It's a rigid and sterile environment, but it's still inviting to the eye and it doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel like it was computer generated or drawn using only straight lines. It feels like a real setting that you could walk into yourself. And that's important because there are a lot of artists nowadays who draw environments, just a hallway or a room or anything, with nothing but straight lines and everything is perfectly lit from every angle because they had to design the room and they didn't think about the shadowing. So then you have this fake computer looking environment that people are just kind of hastily shoved into, and it feels like stickers on a picture of a place, and it just doesn't feel real. It feels too sterile. Rooms in comics that aren't supposed to be sterile feel sterile, whereas the rooms in this comic that are sterile don't feel sterile. So that is definitely a strength. Like I've said before a few times, he's just really good at drawing environments. And at the end of issue 3, we finally get a good cliffhanger. And it's pretty obvious what's about to happen, I think, but at least it's a cliffhanger. It doesn't leave you feeling like you just reached the end of something. So this series as a whole feels very poetic, it feels very dignified, it feels very measured. And you definitely have to have patience to really appreciate it, I think. But I think that patience is worth it. I think that Richard Blake could have benefited from co-writing with somebody. It's a great idea. I just feel like the dialogue could be moving us along faster. I feel like the story could be a little bit more engaging in general. One little nitpick that I have, I don't like these word bubbles. I don't like how square they are. I don't like the font very much. They feel too clean. The word bubbles feel sterile and they kind of break the illusion for me. But that's just being picky. So I'm going to give Hexagon Bridge as a series, so far, an 8 out of 10. I think it's really good. I think it has a lot of potential. It's just got a couple things here and there that are evident of a newcomer. But it's absolutely still worth buying. It doesn't look like it's a limited series yet, so what that means is they're going to wait and see how the sales are going and see how many more issues they want to publish. So what that means is you should go out and buy this issue so that Image sees good sales figures, so that they keep publishing this story so we can actually get to the ending. Otherwise, we're just going to be stuck with like 4 or 5 issues that are leading towards a conclusion, but we never get the conclusion because the money wasn't there. And that's lame. So my rating is 8 out of 10. Did you read it? What do you think? Today's question comes from CBlaze13, and he wants to know, are you reading the current Hulk series, and if so, what do you think about it? Yes, I am reading that new series, and I think I like it, but here's the problem I have. Before this current run of Hulk, there was a run by Donny Cates that I did not like, at all. And before that, there was a run by Al Ewing, which was the best Hulk that I've read in years. And it is really, really hard to follow up a series as good as this one. So until I can separate the new series from the really good old series in my brain, I feel like my opinions are going to be too biased. So as soon as I can look at the new Incredible Hulk series as its own thing, then I will do a review, and it's probably going to be pretty positive. Good question.